A silent code is carved into the stones of medieval cathedrals. These intricate patterns are not random decorations. They form a lost language of geometry, a complex system of meaning that stonemasons used to encode their deepest understanding of the universe. By the end of this journey, you will be able to look at an ancient carving and see the hidden messages its creator left behind. Why would a master mason hide advanced mathematics in the face of a leafy stone demon? And what cosmic truths are locked within the proportions of a simple circle? What does it say about us that we are only now learning to hear what these stones have been saying for centuries? A single candle flame flickers, its light dancing across the stone as a monk guides his compass. He is not drawing a simple circle. He is tracing the boundary of the universe, a perfect form without beginning or end. For this medieval mind, geometry was far more than lines and angles. It was the sacred architecture of reality itself, a divine language written into the fabric of creation. Long before the great cathedrals rose, philosophers like Plato argued that the physical world was but a flawed echo of a perfect geometric realm. God was the ultimate geometer, and the circle, the square, the triangle, these were the fundamental letters of his cosmic alphabet. To study them was to read from the blueprint of all existence. This was not a dry academic exercise. It was a spiritual quest. By replicating these perfect forms in their art and architecture, these creators believed they were building a bridge to the divine, constructing a small piece of heaven on earth where human order could mirror the perfection of the cosmos. This profound spiritual drive is the very heart of the mystery. It explains why a master mason would pour such effort into the precise angle of a vault or the exact proportions of a window. He was not just building a wall, he was participating in a sacred act, encoding a fragment of eternal truth into his work. With this essential motivation clear, the question naturally shifts from why to where. Where did these stonemasons choose to speak their geometric language most eloquently? The labyrinth at Chartres Cathedral is a journey frozen in stone. Pilgrims did not walk its path just once. They traced its winding, circuitous route again and again, a physical meditation on a singular, profound geometric form, the circle. This was not merely a decorative floor pattern. It was a spiritual map, a coded representation of a human life's twisting path toward a divine center. Every curve and turn was calculated using the same sacred ratios that govern the cosmos itself. This geometric language speaks even more clearly on the cathedral's royal portal. Look closely at the archways framing the sculpted saints and kings. You will see repeating patterns of leaves, vines, and interlocking shapes that seem to dance with a silent, rhythmic order. Modern analysis reveals these are not just artistic flourishes. The spacing between the carvings, the proportions of the arches, even the number of petals on a stone flower often align with the same mathematical ratios that produce harmonious chords in music. A specific arch might perfectly mirror the ratio that creates a perfect fifth in a Gregorian chant. The Masons were translating music, the music of the spheres, into a visual form. They were building a sermon in stone, proclaiming that the universe was built on a foundation of beautiful, intelligible order. To create such perfect harmony, these artisans needed more than faith and a steady hand. They relied on a set of tools so simple and yet so powerful that they became symbols of their craft, the very keys to unlocking this hidden language. Inside that quiet workshop, the master mason's world was defined by two simple tools, the compass and the straightedge. With just these instruments, he could conjure the perfect forms that ruled the universe. The compass, with its two legs, could sweep out the flawless infinite circle. The unmarked straightedge could draw the line of absolute truth, a direct path from one point to another. There were no rulers for measurement, no numbers to scribble down. The geometry they practiced was pure, built from first principles, a process of creation that mirrored the divine act itself. This was a sacred craft, the ability to construct a perfect square, to find the golden ratio hidden within a line, or to weave a complex pentagram from a sequence of circles. This was knowledge so powerful it was often protected by the Masons' Guild. It was passed in whispers from master to apprentice, a living language of construction. Let us reconstruct one of their most potent symbols, the pentagram. First, the Mason would draw a single circle with his compass. Then, without changing its span, he would walk the compass around the circumference, marking 5 equidistant points. Connecting these points with his straightedge, he would watch as the 5-pointed star, a shape of profound mystical meaning, emerged from the void. This was not magic, but it was a kind of miracle, the revelation of complex, perfect form from the simplest of actions. This mastery of pure geometry forged an unbreakable bridge between the abstract world of ideal forms and the physical reality of stone and mortar. But why would a Mason choose to hide such a potent symbol, born from such perfect geometry, in the dark corners of a cathedral, where it might be mistaken for a mere decorative flourish? Deep within the shadowy aisles, a stone face stares out, its mouth agape as a cascade of leaves and vines erupts into the stillness. This is the Green Man, a mysterious figure carved into hundreds of medieval churches. For centuries, these foliate heads were explained away as simple pagan relics, forgotten nature spirits clinging to the walls of a new faith. But look closer, past the initial strangeness, and you will see a different story written in the stone. The vines spiraling from the figure's mouth are not a chaotic tangle of greenery. They unfold with a precise, rhythmic order, their curves tracing the same elegant spiral found in a nautilus shell or the seed head of a sunflower. This is the logarithmic spiral, a shape governed by the Fibonacci sequence, where each number is the sum of the two before it. 1, 1, 2, 3, 5, 8, 13, a pattern that appears again and again in the growing world. To carve such a spiral required more than artistic skill. It demanded the Mason first construct it perfectly on parchment using his compass and straightedge, encoding the mathematical law of growth into the impassive stone. The Green Man, therefore, is not a ghost of a forgotten god. He is a profound philosophical statement. He represents the medieval understanding that the wild, untamed force of nature itself operates on a hidden framework of divine geometry. The leaves sprouting from his mouth are a silent sermon, proclaiming that even the chaos of life is built upon a foundation of beautiful, intelligible order. This fusion of the organic and the mathematical in a single, haunting face shows just how pervasive this geometric language was. It was not confined to the grand arches and towering windows. It was whispered in the darkest corners, a secret known to the craftsmen who saw the hand of the geometer in every leaf and vine. If this hidden code could transform a simple decorative motif into a complex symbol of cosmic order, what profound truths did the Masons embed in the very bones of the buildings themselves, in the structures that held the entire weight of the stone sky above? Walk through any great cathedral and you will see them, a familiar cast of characters carved in stone. The trefoil, a shape of 3 graceful arcs, appears above a doorway. The quatrefoil, a 4-lobed flower, frames a saint's face. An intricate, endless knot winds its way around a column base, For a long time, we saw these as mere decoration, repeating motifs in a vast stone tapestry. But these are not just pretty designs, they are the words and sentences of the Masons' geometric language, a shared visual vocabulary that crossed continents and centuries. Each symbol is a compact vessel of meaning, built from the same sacred geometry and understood by initiates of the craft. The trefoil, formed from 3 overlapping circles, was far more than a pleasing shape. Its 3-in-1 nature made it the perfect symbol for the Holy Trinity, a visual representation of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit united in a single, indivisible form. The quatrefoil, with its 4 balanced lobes, commonly stood for the 4 evangelists Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, whose Gospels were the 4 pillars of the Christian story. It could also represent the 4 classical elements, earth, air, fire, and water, tying the spiritual world to the very fabric of the physical one. Then there is Solomon's knot, a complex, interlaced design with no beginning and no end. This was a powerful symbol of eternity and the interconnectedness of all things, a reminder that the divine weave connects every soul and every element of creation. The true genius of this system lies in its construction. Every one of these symbols, from the simplest trefoil to the most elaborate knot, is built from the same small set of operations performed with the compass and straightedge. To create a trefoil, a mason would first inscribe a circle. He would then use his compass to mark 3 equidistant points on its circumference, the centers for 3 new, overlapping circles. The trefoil's arcs are segments of these perfect circles. The quatrefoil emerges from the same process, starting with a square and inscribing 4 semicircles along its sides. Solomon's knot is a masterclass in this geometric language, a puzzle of interlocking lines and curves that all derive from circles and their intersections. This consistency reveals a profound truth. There was no central authority issuing blueprints. This was a unified system of thought, a way of seeing and building that was passed down through the guilds. A mason from England and a mason from France, though they might never meet, shared this common tongue. They both knew how to speak with a compass, and they both understood the meanings these shapes conveyed. Learning to recognize these symbols is like learning the alphabet of a long-lost language. It is the first step, allowing us to read the simple proverbs carved into the stone. But what about the more complex narratives? What happens when these geometric words are combined to form entire chapters, to tell a story that spans an entire wall or a towering rose window? Rosslyn Chapel feels less like a building and more like a forest of stone. Every inch of its interior, from the lowest arches to the highest pinnacles, is dense with carved foliage, stars, angels, and symbols so numerous they have defied a complete interpretation for centuries. This is not simple decoration. It is a veritable encyclopedia carved in sandstone, a place where the stonemasons' geometric language reached its most complex and ambitious form. While popular tales speak of hidden treasures and the Knights Templar, the real secret of Rosslyn lies in the stone itself, in the sheer density of its geometric code. Take the famous Apprentice Pillar. Legend says it was carved by a young mason who surpassed his master, but its true wonder is its design. The pillar is a spiral of carved vines, but these are not random curls. The spiral follows a precise geometric progression, a visual echo of the same growth patterns found in the Green Man. It is a pillar that seems to be alive, a stone tree reaching for the ceiling, embodying the idea of divine order manifest in the living world. This intricate work is only the beginning. Look up at the arches and ceilings and you will find a dizzying array of patterns. Checkerboards, 5-pointed stars, and complex knots cover every surface. Experts in sacred geometry have analyzed these forms and found they often correspond to precise musical ratios. A specific pattern of cubes might mirror the ratio that produces a perfect octave in music. Researchers in archaeoacoustics suggest the very placement and proportions of these carvings could be designed to shape the sound within the chapel, creating resonant frequencies that would amplify Gregorian chants, turning the entire space into a giant stone instrument for worship. What we are seeing at Rosslyn is a tradition pushed to its absolute limit. The builders were not just using geometry to represent stories, they were using it to create an immersive, multi-sensory experience where sight and sound worked in harmony to elevate the soul. They wove together Christian symbolism, possible Templar references, and a deep, perhaps pre-Christian, understanding of natural law into a single, breathtaking tapestry. This staggering ambition forces a simple human question. Who were these individuals? What kind of mind could hold such complex systems of number, form, and meaning, and then translate them flawlessly into enduring stone? These master masons left no signed manifestos. They built their legacy not with words but with stone, and their true biography is written in the geometric precision of every arch and leaf. They were members of powerful and secretive guilds, sworn brotherhoods that controlled the building trades across Europe. Within the confines of their lodge, a world away from the noisy construction site, they guarded a body of knowledge as valuable as any treasure. Their most important tool was not the chisel or the mallet, but the tracing floor, a vast, flat surface of plaster or wood where they would lay out the full-scale geometric designs for the most complex stonework. Here, using chalk and string, compass and straightedge, they solved the puzzles of three-dimensional structure in 2 dimensions, mapping out the intricate curves of a vault or the precise angles of a window tracery before a single block was cut. This was their living blueprint, a temporary drawing that held the entire plan for a section of the cathedral. To be granted access to the tracing floor and to understand the geometric principles behind these drawings was the highest achievement of a mason's career. It marked his transition from a simple laborer, a rough mason who shaped basic blocks, to a Freemason, a master of the craft who possessed the liberty to design and create. This knowledge was his intellectual property, the key that unlocked higher pay, greater respect, and a form of job security we would recognize today. A master who could geometrically prove that his arch would stand was not just an artist, he was an engineer, a man who could command the very forces of gravity. The guild system was the engine that preserved this complex language across centuries. Through a strict apprenticeship that lasted 7 years or more, this sacred geometry was passed down. An apprentice would begin by memorizing simple patterns, the geometric alphabet of trefoils and quatrefoils, before gradually being initiated into the construction of more complex forms, the pentagrams and labyrinthine spirals. The deeper philosophical meanings, the connections to music and cosmic order, may have faded for some, but the practical geometric rules were preserved with absolute fidelity. This ensured that a cathedral begun by one generation could be finished by another, its architectural language perfectly consistent. When we look at a medieval carving, we are not looking at the work of a solitary, anonymous hand. We are witnessing the output of a sophisticated intellectual community, a network of thinkers in stone who shared a common visual tongue across the borders of nations. This shared language of the compass did not just build individual cathedrals. It wove an invisible geometric web across the continent, a connection that would soon express itself in one of history's most sudden and mysterious architectural revolutions. While the master masons of Northern Europe were carving their sermons in stone, a parallel tradition of sacred geometry was flourishing under the sun of southern Spain. The Alhambra Palace stands as its ultimate expression. Step into the court of the lions, and you are enveloped by a world of pure pattern. Intricate, interlocking designs cascade across arches and dance along walls, creating an illusion of infinite repetition that stretches toward the divine. This breathtaking beauty is not random. It is the product of a geometric language developed with the same intellectual rigor as the Gothic, yet speaking with a distinct and mesmerizing accent. In Islamic art, which traditionally avoids figural representation, geometry became the primary vehicle for expressing the infinite and orderly nature of creation. Every surface becomes a canvas for complex tessellations and star polygons, all governed by strict, unbreakable rules. The secret to this complexity lies in a system of standardized tiles known as giri. These were not simple squares or hexagons. They were pre-decorated tiles in shapes like stars, pentagons, and bodies, each edge precisely notched so they could interlock perfectly. A master artist would not draw the final, dizzying pattern freehand. Instead, he would arrange these giri tiles according to a geometric grid. When the tiles were placed, their pre-drawn lines would connect seamlessly across the entire surface, creating the elaborate stars and intricate straps that seem to weave over and under one another. This was a modular system for generating near-infinite complexity, a kind of medieval computer code for beauty. Modern mathematicians analyzing the Alhambra have identified that its walls display examples of all 17 possible two-dimensional symmetry groups. This is the complete mathematical set of ways a pattern can repeat itself across a flat plane. The builders of the Alhambra, working centuries before Western mathematicians formalized these concepts, had discovered them all through practical craft and a deep philosophical drive. Their swirling, star-filled patterns are not just decoration. They are profound visualizations of complex mathematical truths, a silent exploration of infinity and order. This tradition in Moorish Spain was not an isolated phenomenon. It was part of a pan-Eurasian conversation conducted in the universal language of geometry. The confluence of Christian, Jewish, and Islamic scholars in medieval Spain created a unique crucible of ideas, where knowledge from the ancient world was preserved, advanced, and shared. The geometric principles perfected in the Alhambra did not stay within its walls. They traveled, carried along trade routes and through scholarly exchanges, subtly influencing the decorative arts and architectural thinking of a Europe that was soon to be transformed. This flow of ideas sets the stage for one of history's most dramatic and puzzling architectural shifts, a sudden revolution in stone that seemed to defy all previous rules of construction. A quiet revolution was unfolding in the scriptoriums of Toledo. Here, in a city where Christian, Jewish, and Muslim scholars worked side by side, the future of European architecture was being written not in stone, but in ink. They pored over ancient manuscripts, translating complex geometric texts from Arabic and Greek into Latin. For the first time in centuries, European scholars gained direct access to the full works of Euclid, the foundational father of geometry, along with the groundbreaking algebraic advances of thinkers like Al-Khwarizmi. This was not merely an academic exercise, it was an intellectual supercharge, a sudden and profound expansion of the available tools for understanding shape, space, and proportion. Before this great translation movement, a master mason operated largely on intuition and a tradition of proven rules. He knew that a certain proportion felt right, that a specific arch built with a particular geometric construction would stand strong. He used the golden ratio because his compass showed him it was beautiful and stable. Now, for the first time, the scholarly world could provide the rigorous mathematical proof for why it worked. The intuitive language of the compass was being fused with the formal language of mathematics. This new, hybrid knowledge flowed directly from the scholar's desk to the mason's tracing floor. A master mason, now possibly literate or advised by learned monks, could understand the geometric principles behind his designs with a new depth. He was no longer just replicating forms. He was engineering them with a newfound confidence, armed with a more complete map of the mathematical territory. This cross-pollination of ideas directly fueled the architectural explosion of the High Gothic. The breathtaking height of Chartres, the delicate stone lace of Sainte-Chapelle, these were not just acts of faith, they were declarations of a new geometric confidence, a direct result of this fusion of Eastern knowledge and Western craft. The stones themselves bear witness to this moment of connection. A mason could now inlay a complex star pattern, a design straight from the geometric traditions of the Islamic world, into the floor of a French cathedral without a second thought. It was all part of the same great conversation, a universal language of form that transcended culture and creed. This historical truth forces a humbling realization. The crowning achievements of medieval Europe were built, in part, upon a foundation of shared knowledge that flowed from Athens through Baghdad to Toledo. The geometric code in the stones is a permanent record of this collaboration, a silent testament to the fact that human understanding is rarely born in isolation, but is woven together from countless threads across continents and centuries. If these carvings are a record of a vast cross-cultural exchange, then what was the ultimate purpose of encoding this knowledge so carefully? Was it merely to build higher walls and more beautiful windows, or was there a deeper, more urgent reason to hide this wisdom in plain sight? These intricate carvings were far more than decoration. They were a sophisticated system of communication, a code with multiple layers of purpose that was essential to the medieval world. The first and most profound reason was education. In an age before printing, when few could read, the cathedral was a poor man's Bible. Its walls were the pages, and the geometric carvings were the paragraphs. A pilgrim could look at a trefoil and understand the concept of the Holy Trinity, three persons in one God, without reading a single word of Latin. He could trace the endless path of a labyrinth and grasp the spiritual journey of life. These symbols translated complex, abstract theology into a universal visual language that anyone, regardless of education, could understand. They were a permanent public library of stone, designed to teach and inspire awe. But this knowledge was not only for the mind, it was also believed to be a shield for the soul. Sacred geometry was thought to possess a tangible, protective power. The same perfect ratios that mirrored the harmony of the heavens were believed to create a zone of spiritual safety. A pentagram carved over a doorway was not just a symbol, it was a talisman, a geometric ward against chaos and evil. The builders were not just constructing a building, they were consecrating a space, using the divine language of form to invite blessing and banish darkness. This belief in the active power of proportion fused seamlessly with the most practical need of all, making the building stand up. For the master mason, the same geometric construction that produced a beautiful rose window was the very same diagram that ensured an arch could bear the immense weight of the tower above it. The process was one and the same. When he laid out the complex curves of a vault on his tracing floor using only a compass, he was simultaneously solving an engineering problem and creating a work of art. The interlocking stones of a Gothic arch, cut to precise geometric templates, locked together under their own weight, a principle known as compression. The beautiful star patterns on the ceiling were often a direct map of the underlying stone ribs that distributed the load down to the pillars. The geometry was the structure. This reveals a world completely foreign to our modern, compartmentalized thinking. For the medieval mind, there was no separation between science, religion, and art. They were a single, integrated whole. To study geometry was to understand God's creation. To build with it was to participate in that creation. To decorate with it was to celebrate and protect it. The stone carvings are the ultimate expression of this holistic vision, where a single symbol could be a sermon, a shield, and a structural diagram all at once. The loss of this unified way of seeing the world may be the true tragedy, the real secret that these silent stones have been trying to tell us all along. The entire cathedral is a compass drawing brought to life. Look up from the nave floor and you are standing inside a massive, three-dimensional geometric proof. The soaring height, the delicate stone ribs arcing overhead, the vast expanse of stained glass, none of this was left to chance or artistic whim. Every dimension was determined by a sacred system of proportions, a language spoken with squares, triangles, and circles. The ground plan of these buildings was often based on the square, a symbol of the earthly world, while the soaring verticality of the nave reached for the heavens, creating a dynamic tension between the human and the divine. The master key to this structural harmony was often the equilateral triangle. If you take a cross-section of a cathedral like Amiens, you will find its entire profile, from the floor to the peak of the roof, can be inscribed within a series of perfect, interlocking equilateral triangles. This single, stable shape governed the height of the aisles, the slope of the roof, and the springing point of the arches, locking the entire structure into a single, harmonious geometric family. This is the true meaning of the medieval saying that these buildings were designed by geometry, not by strength. Their stability did not come from brute mass, but from the invisible, unshakable order of perfect form. The circle, that symbol of heaven and eternity, finds its ultimate expression in the rose windows. These are not just enormous decorative wheels of colored glass. They are masterclasses in radial symmetry, often based on the number 12, echoing the 12 apostles and the 12 gates of the heavenly Jerusalem. To construct one, a mason would begin with a central point, then use his compass to divide the circle into 12 perfect segments. The intricate stone tracery that holds the glass, the petals and lobes that seem to bloom from the center, all derive from this initial sacred division. Light itself was filtered through geometry, casting a kaleidoscope of colored shapes onto the floor below, turning sunlight into a living sermon. To walk through a Gothic cathedral is to walk through the medieval mind itself. It is a world where faith, art, and science were one, where the universe was understood to be built on a foundation of beautiful, intelligible number. This grammar book of stone, written on such a colossal scale, reveals the language at its most powerful. But this same language of meaning and proportion was not confined to these vast public sermons. It was also whispered in the most intimate of spaces, etched into the personal objects that people carried with them through their daily lives. This geometric literacy was not a secret reserved for bishops and master masons. It was the common visual tongue of the entire medieval world, spoken just as fluently in the village square as it was in the cathedral nave. Consider the humble market cross standing at the heart of a town's daily commerce. Its base was often a perfect octagon, an eight-sided figure rich with meaning. This shape represented the idea of regeneration and new beginnings, echoing the eighth day of creation, the day of Christ's resurrection and the promise of a new world. Every time a merchant set up his stall beside it, or a housewife paused to rest on its steps, they were interacting with a shape that silently reinforced the core message of their faith, that life was a cycle of death and rebirth. Even more personal was the baptismal font in the local parish church. Far from the soaring vaults of a cathedral, this was where the most fundamental Christian ritual took place. These fonts were most often circular, a shape without beginning or end, symbolizing the eternal life granted through the sacrament. Others were octagonal, with the 8 sides again signifying the new creation, the spiritual rebirth of the person being baptized. The very vessel that held the water was a geometric sermon on the meaning of the ritual itself. This language of protection even entered the home. Carved into the wooden beams and stone lintels of ordinary houses, you can find what are often called witch marks. These are not random scratches, they are complex geometric patterns, interlocking circles and compass-drawn labyrinths known as daisy wheels. They were not mere decoration. People believed these symbols, born from the same sacred geometry, had the power to ward off evil spirits and misfortune. They were a practical application of the belief that divine order, when inscribed onto a space, could create a zone of safety. From the grandest arch to the simplest mark on a cottage door, the same principles were at work. This reveals a society with a shared visual literacy that has largely vanished today. A medieval farmer may not have been able to read a book, but he could likely read the symbols carved into his church font and understand the message of the octagonal market cross. He lived in a world where meaning was embedded in form, where the circle and the square were not just shapes but vessels of profound ideas that connected his daily life to the cosmic order. The loss of this universal geometric vocabulary represents a quiet fracture in our cultural memory, a story written in stone and wood that we have slowly forgotten how to read. The intricate carvings did not vanish in a single day. Their language faded over generations, like a slow sunset whose colors are gradually replaced by the deep blue of a new night. The world that had given birth to this geometric code was itself being transformed by intellectual revolutions that reshaped how people saw themselves and their universe. The first profound shift was the rise of humanism during the Renaissance. The focus of art and philosophy turned decisively from the divine to the human. Where a medieval mason carved a symbolic green man to represent nature's hidden order, a Renaissance sculptor like Michelangelo carved David, a celebration of idealized human form and emotion. Realistic representation, perspective, and anatomical accuracy became the new artistic ideals, pushing aside the abstract, symbolic language of sacred geometry. Art was no longer primarily a window to heaven, but a mirror held up to humanity. Knowledge itself changed homes with the invention of the printing press. For centuries, complex ideas were encoded in the very fabric of public buildings, a library open to all who could see. Now, knowledge began to migrate from public stone to private paper, locked in books that required literacy to access. The geometric code, once a universal tongue for the illiterate and learned alike, became a specialized interest, one of many competing streams of information in a newly textual world. This separation deepened with the professionalization of architecture. The master mason, who held both the geometric design in his mind and the chisel in his hand, saw his role split in two. The architect emerged as an educated gentleman who conceived the plan on paper, while the builder was reduced to a technician who executed another's vision. The living knowledge of the tracing floor, where geometric problems were solved through chalk and compass, was replaced by detailed, static drawings. The intellectual soul of the craft was divorced from its physical hands. As these changes took hold, the powerful guilds that had protected and transmitted this secret knowledge for centuries began to weaken. Their monopoly on training was broken, and their guarded geometric principles slowly dissipated, losing their deep philosophical meanings and becoming mere historical curiosities or simple decorative motifs. The final and perhaps most decisive shift was philosophical. The scientific revolution of the 17th century championed a new, mechanistic view of the universe. Isaac Newton described a world governed by mathematical laws, to be sure, but these were laws of force and motion, not of divine harmony. The cosmos was no longer seen as a living embodiment of God's geometric mind, but as a vast clockwork machine. In this new world, a circle was just a curve, a ratio was just a number. The stone carvings lost their voice not because they were destroyed, but because the culture lost the ability to hear them. The language was not erased, it simply fell silent, its profound meanings forgotten by all but a few. Realizing that this was not a sudden death, but a slow forgetting makes the modern effort to decipher these stones all the more urgent. We are not just recovering lost patterns, we are trying to learn how to listen again. Far to the north, on the windswept coasts of Scandinavia, a different dialect of this geometric language was being carved into granite. Here you will not find the delicate trefoils or soaring arches of a Gothic cathedral. Instead, the rune stones of the Viking Age speak with a bold, angular voice, their surfaces etched with the powerful, interlocking forms of Norse art. The most sophisticated of these styles is the urn style, a final flowering of Viking artistry. Look closely at these carvings, and you will see a magnificent, swirling battle between serpents and other beasts, their bodies elongated into elegant, looping ribbons. At first glance, this seems purely organic, a chaotic struggle frozen in wood and stone, but the underlying structure is pure, uncompromising geometry. The bodies of the beasts are not drawn freehand. They are constructed from precise, interlocking circles and arcs, their paths weaving over and under one another in a strict, rhythmic pattern. The artist first laid out a geometric grid of circles and tangent lines, and then, like a master puzzle solver, he wove the animal forms within that rigid framework. The creatures themselves become living geometry. Their sinuous curves a direct expression of the perfect circles from which they were born. This was not just decoration. A rune stone was a permanent declaration, raised to mark a territory, to commemorate a fallen chieftain, or to proclaim a family's legacy. The complex knotwork encircling the runes was more than a frame. It was a shield of intertwined power, a visual incantation meant to protect the memory of the dead and ward off malevolent forces. The endless, unbroken lines of the interlace symbolized the unbreakable cycle of life, death, and destiny, a core belief in the pre-Christian Norse worldview. The profound similarity is not in the style but in the impulse. Just as a Christian mason used a trefoil to symbolize the Trinity, a Norse carver used an unbroken knot to represent the web of fate. Both cultures, separated by faith and geography, turned to the same fundamental language of compass-drawn forms to encode their deepest understandings of the cosmos, protection, and memory. They used different alphabets of shape, but they were speaking the same essential tongue, seeing the urn style as a geometric code rather than just an artistic one, fundamentally expands our search. It reveals that this lost language was not a single manuscript, but a whole family of related dialects spoken across the medieval world. With this broader, more inclusive map of geometric expression in hand, our search can now leap across centuries, using tools those Viking and Gothic masters could never have dreamed of to see their work in an entirely new dimension. A master mason's chisel would never leave a perfectly smooth surface. His every stroke carried a unique signature, a microscopic texture invisible to anyone standing on the cathedral floor below. Today, a spinning mirror on a tripod captures that texture with laser light, recording every chip and groove in a cloud of millions of precise points. This is 3D laser scanning, and it is giving us a time machine that lets us examine a carving as if we were the apprentice holding the mason's lantern. These high-resolution scans do more than just preserve a perfect digital replica. They reveal the ghost of the creative process itself. By analyzing the direction and depth of the tool marks, researchers can now trace the exact sequence of cuts a mason made centuries ago. We can see where he started his compass point, how he pivoted his arm to carve a curve, and even identify moments where he corrected a slight deviation, a human hand adjusting its course toward perfect geometric form. This digital clarity extends beyond the chisel's touch to the slow erosion of time. Our eyes might see a worn, smooth section on a capital, but the scanner detects microscopic patterns of abrasion. It can show us the exact path where generations of pilgrims ran their fingers over a specific symbol, a silent map of popular devotion and touch worn into the stone. This data allows us to virtually restore the carving to its original sharpness, stripping away centuries of weather and wear to see the geometric design as it was first unveiled. Once we have this pristine digital model, the analysis can go even deeper. Specialized software can take the curves of a rose window's tracery and instantly calculate its underlying proportions. It can confirm with mathematical certainty that a specific arch conforms to the golden ratio, or that the relationship between a circle's circumference and its diameter in a labyrinth design is a remarkably close approximation of pi. These are not just abstract numbers, they are the hard data that validates the intuition of generations of historians, proving that these beautiful forms were also deliberate mathematical expressions. One of the most profound discoveries from this digital analysis is the confirmation of a lost standard. By comparing scans of buildings across different regions, researchers have identified that the dimensions of thousands of seemingly unique carvings and architectural elements actually cluster around multiples of a specific length. This was the mason's foot, a local unit of measurement that varied from town to town, a secret ruler known only to the guild. A master from York and a master from Lincoln might both use a 12-part geometric construction, but the physical size of their work was governed by their own local standard, a tangible piece of craft knowledge that scanning has now pulled from the shadows. This technological renaissance is our Rosetta Stone, allowing us to read the grammar and even the local dialect of this geometric language with unprecedented clarity. Yet the data does not always confirm our assumptions. Sometimes it challenges them, forcing us to reconsider the very stories we thought the stones were telling. Kilpeck Church stands as a riot of stone, a stark contrast to the serene order of Chartres. Its doorway is crowded with contorted figures, serpentine beasts, and the startling, explicit Sheila na gigs that seem to mock any notion of sacred decorum. At first glance, these carvings appear to be pure folk art, an eruption of raw, chaotic energy untouched by the compass and straightedge. They challenge the very idea of a universal geometric language, forcing us to confront the messy, human reality behind the stones. Yet look past the wild subject matter and you will find the ghost of geometry holding everything together. The vines that twist around the doorway are not random scribbles. They are composed of repeated, rhythmic curves that can be generated using a compass set to a specific, fixed radius. The beasts and warriors are arranged in a visual syncopation, a balanced pattern that creates harmony without relying on the perfect ratios of the golden mean. This is not the strict Latin of high Gothic cathedrals. It is a local dialect, a Celtic accent that values rhythmic flow and visual balance over rigid mathematical precision. The master carver here was likely working from a deep, intuitive understanding of geometric principles, using them to create a sense of life and movement rather than static, perfect order. He was speaking the same language, but his vocabulary included playfulness and even the profane. This is the crucial nuance Kilpeck offers. It reminds us that the geometric code was not a straitjacket. It was a flexible system, a set of tools that could be used for solemn sermons in one place and for vibrant, earthly stories in another. The Sheela na gig, a figure whose meaning is still fiercely debated, might have been a protective talisman, a fertility symbol, or a warning against lust. Her power may not come from a hidden pentagram, but from her shocking, unforgettable presence within a rhythmically balanced frame. She forces us to ask whether our modern search for sacred geometry is sometimes too narrow, too eager to find cosmic order in every chip of the chisel. Perhaps some carvings were simply meant to be lively, to tell a local joke, or to ward off evil with a grimace rather than a geometric proof. Kilpec does not break the code. It expands it. It shows us a world where the master mason was also a storyteller, a village artist, and a custodian of traditions far older than the church itself. He used his geometric skill not just to mirror the heavens, but to capture the untamable spirit of the earth. If a single, small church can hold such a vibrant contradiction, then what other surprises are waiting, hidden in plain sight, not on the grand facades, but in the very tools the masons left behind? For a medieval scholar, the universe was not a silent, empty space. It was a magnificent, resonating instrument, a cosmic symphony played on strings of geometry and number. This entire worldview was structured around a curriculum known as the quadrivium. Think of it not as 4 separate subjects, but as 4 different windows looking onto the same divine reality. Arithmetic was the study of pure number in itself. Geometry was number made visible in space. Music was number made audible in time, and astronomy was number in motion across the heavens. These were not academic specialties. They were the fundamental pillars of a unified understanding of creation. The Roman philosopher Boethius perfectly captured this connection when he described music as unheard geometry. He meant that the very same mathematical ratio, for example 3:2, that produced a perfectly harmonious musical chord, a perfect fifth, would also produce a rectangle or an arch that was visually and structurally perfect. A mason constructing a vault was not just solving an engineering problem. He was composing a frozen chord, a piece of celestial music translated into stone. This is the profound shift in perspective we must make. When we see a complex geometric pattern on a capital, we are not looking at a pretty design. We are looking at a philosophical argument. The mason who carved it was doing far more than decorating a building. He was actively participating in the cosmic order, aligning his small, human-made structure with the perfect, mathematical harmony that governed the planets and the stars. His compass was a tuning fork for the universe. This deep, intellectual background makes the sheer endurance of these carvings almost miraculous. They have survived wars, revolutions, and centuries of weathering. They have endured not just physically, but culturally, outlasting the very worldview that gave them their deepest meaning. How did these intricate stone messages, so dependent on a specific way of thinking, manage to persist through the profound intellectual shifts that followed the medieval era? The rain has washed the Irish landscape for 1,000 years, yet the high cross of Muirdach still stands. This towering slab of sandstone is not a crude monument. It is a meticulously calculated geometric diagram, a sermon carved in stone whose language is one of perfect balance and divine order. The cross itself is the primary symbol, a fusion of the circle and the square that maps the intersection of heaven and earth. But look closer at its surface, at the panels teeming with intricate knotwork and biblical scenes. Every figure, every scene is framed within strict geometric borders, a visual rhythm that guides the eye upward from the earthly stories at the base to the celestial glory at the summit. The complex interlaced patterns that fill the backgrounds are a marvel of compass work. These are not just decorative fills. Each endless knot, with no true beginning or end, is a profound symbol of eternity and the interconnectedness of all creation within God's boundless plan. To create such flawless patterns, the carver first laid out a precise grid of circles and intersecting lines, a hidden geometric skeleton upon which the visual complexity was woven. The entire monument is a study in proportion. The height of the cross often relates to its width through simple, powerful ratios that create a sense of unshakable stability and monumentality, making the cross feel both rooted in the earth and reaching for the heavens. These were not solitary artworks. They were the focal points of monastic communities, the centers of outdoor worship and teaching. A pilgrim would walk around the cross, reading the biblical stories from the panels, while the geometric borders and endless knots silently reinforced the message of a universe built on divine, intelligible law. This is a unique fusion, a distinctly Celtic expression of faith. The native tradition of metalworking, with its love for complex, swirling patterns, was seamlessly married to the new Christian iconography, and geometry was the unifying language that bound them together. That these crosses have endured centuries of wind, rain, and human conflict is a testament not just to the stone, but to the power of their form. Their resilience is carved into their very proportions, a final, silent witness to a world that believed truth could be held in the perfect curve of a circle and the unwavering line of a cross. This geometric language, so powerfully expressed in these enduring sentinels, was not confined to the grand and the public. It found its way into the most personal and portable of objects, hidden in plain sight within the pages of books that were themselves considered sacred architecture. A master mason never carved a simple shape. Every circle, every square, every triangle he inscribed was a loaded word in a dense theological text. The circle was the ultimate symbol of perfection. It has no starting point and no end, a form that perfectly described the nature of God, of heaven, and of eternity itself. When you see a rose window, you are not just looking at a beautiful arrangement of stained glass. You are looking directly at a depiction of the divine mind, infinite and all-encompassing. The square stands in perfect opposition, grounded, stable, and finite. Its four equal sides represented the earthly realm. It was the shape of the material world, the four cardinal directions, the four seasons, and the four classical elements: earth, air, fire, and water. The floor plan of a cathedral was often a square or a series of squares, rooting the entire structure in the world of humankind. Then there is the triangle, the most potent and concise symbol in the Christian lexicon. Its three sides in one form made it the universal representation of the Holy Trinity, the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. A mason could carve a single, simple triangle, and in that one gesture, communicate one of the most complex doctrines of his faith. This symbolic dictionary transforms a walk through a cathedral from an architectural tour into a reading of a sacred text. A round baptismal font is not just a bowl, it is a promise of eternal life. A square floor tile is not just paving, it is a reminder of the physical world you stand upon. And a triangular arrangement of windows is a silent sermon on the nature of God. The ultimate geometric challenge and the ultimate theological puzzle was the attempt to square the circle. This was the effort to construct a square with the exact same area as a given circle, using only a compass and straightedge. It is a mathematical problem that was proven impossible centuries later, but for the medieval mind, the struggle itself was the point. To fit the square within the circle, or the circle within the square, was a geometric metaphor for the central drama of their worldview, the struggle to reconcile the perfect, infinite divine with the imperfect, finite material world. It was the quest to bring heaven down to earth. This deep layer of meaning is what separates a mere pattern from a prayer in stone. It connects the work of the medieval mason to a tradition that stretches back through the ages, a timeless human urge to find the signature of the sacred in the silent perfection of form. Beneath your feet in the churches of Rome, the entire cosmos unfolds in stone and glass. The cosmotic pavements are not floors. They are intricate star maps and geometric theorems rendered in the most luxurious materials on Earth. In places like Santa Maria in Cosmedin, masters of this craft assembled a kaleidoscope of colored marble, green serpentine, and deep red porphyry, materials often salvaged from ancient Roman ruins. They cut these precious stones into thousands of tiny, perfect triangles and squares, the fundamental geometric building blocks of their universe. With these simple shapes, they constructed a breathtaking visual symphony of interlocking circles, spinning stars, and complex quatrefoils, each piece fitted together with a precision that rivals modern jewelry. An inscription might humbly state the work was done for the beauty of the house of God, but the geometry itself tells a far grander story. These patterns are dense with numerical symbolism. A series of concentric circles might encode the number 7 for the days of creation, or a complex knot might be built around the number 12, representing the apostles. The pavements were designed as a microcosm, a perfect model of a universe governed by divine mathematics. To walk across this floor was to literally tread upon a representation of the cosmic order, a constant, silent reminder that the church was the center of a harmonious creation. The technical mastery is staggering. To achieve such flawless fits between hard stone pieces, often without visible mortar, required an unparalleled understanding of geometry and a steady hand guided by generations of accumulated craft knowledge. This was not the expansive structural geometry of the Gothic North. It was the language of the compass refined, miniaturized, and set in stone as a permanent, glittering diagram of heaven itself. Inside the quiet scriptorium, a monk's pen traced the same perfect forms a mason carved in stone. The pages of the Lindisfarne Gospels shimmer with a geometric brilliance that speaks the very same language as the high crosses standing guard outside. Look at the carpet pages, those breathtaking panels of pure pattern that precede the gospel texts. Their intricate knotwork, their spirals that bloom like stone flowers, their precise key patterns marching in perfect rhythm, these are not merely ink on vellum. They are compass work, constructed on the same hidden grids of circles and lines that underpin the carvings at Kilpeck or the patterns on a rune stone. The initial letter of a gospel, a monumental Cairo, was not drawn freehand. It was first mapped out with a geometric skeleton, its curves and angles born from the precise intersection of arcs and lines, a structural blueprint for beauty. Even the layout of the page itself, the balance between text and decoration, was often determined by the same harmonic proportions that gave a cathedral its soaring grace. The monk at his desk and the mason at his tracing floor were collaborators in a single grand project. They were nodes in the same intellectual network, breathing life into a shared vision where geometry was the bridge between the human and the divine. One worked in perishable ink, the other in enduring stone, but both were using the same vocabulary to write their praises to a universe built on number. This parallel world of illuminated geometry is more than a fascinating echo. It is a crucial key. The stone carvings have been scarred by 1,000 years of rain and wind, their sharp details softened into ambiguity. But these manuscripts, protected between leather covers, preserve the original intent with stunning clarity. They show us the crisp edges of a knot that has worn smooth on a cross, the vibrant color scheme of a pattern now faded to gray stone, the absolute precision of a line that time has blurred. They confirm that what we might dismiss as folk art or simple decoration was in fact a sophisticated and deliberate expression of a unified visual culture. This pervasive language of form, spoken fluently in both ink and stone, reveals a medieval mind that saw no boundary between the art of the book and the art of the building. Both were arenas for the same sacred act, the glorious structuring of creation. A master mason would likely recognize the underlying structure of Leonardo da Vinci's Vitruvian Man. That iconic drawing of a man inscribed within a circle and a square is not a Renaissance invention, but a powerful echo of the medieval worldview. Leonardo was visualizing the ideas of the ancient Roman architect Vitruvius, but the concept of the human body as a microcosm of divine geometric order was a central pillar of the medieval mind. The Vitruvian Man is in essence a perfected version of the geometric principles that governed every cathedral's plan, a direct bridge between the sacred architecture of the Middle Ages and the human-centered art of the Renaissance. This fascination with geometric order did not end with the Renaissance. Centuries later, as the Industrial Revolution swept across Europe, a powerful counter-movement emerged. Architects and artists, disillusioned by the perceived chaos of the new machine age, looked back with romantic longing to the medieval period. The Gothic revival was born. Buildings like the Houses of Parliament in London were not mere copies of Gothic cathedrals. They were a conscious attempt to resurrect the spiritual and geometric language of the Masons. The architects of this revival pored over medieval patterns, relearning the principles of the pointed arch and the ribbed vault, not just for their beauty, but for the sense of transcendent order they conveyed. This was not nostalgia. It was a search for meaning in a rapidly changing world, a belief that the old geometric code still held a key to building a harmonious society. Even in the seemingly sterile world of 20th century modernism, the ghost of this language reappeared. The architect Le Corbusier, a pioneer of concrete and steel, developed a system of proportion he called the modular. It was a scale of measurements based on the proportions of an idealized human figure and, unmistakably, the golden ratio. He believed this system could bring a humanizing harmony to modern architecture and design, from the dimensions of a kitchen counter to the layout of an entire city. Le Corbusier's modular is a direct descendant of the mason's foot and the sacred ratios of the rose window, a modern, secular reformulation of the ancient quest for a universal geometric standard. The medieval language was never truly lost. Its words were simply translated, its core ideas of harmony, proportion, and symbolic meaning resurfacing again and again whenever a culture felt the need to rebuild its world on a foundation of intelligible order. Scattered across the highlands of Armenia, thousands of khachkars rise from the earth like frozen prayers. These cross stones are not simple monuments. They are masterpieces of sacred geometry, each one a unique snowflake of stone lace centered on the powerful symbol of the cross. The cross itself is not left plain. It is woven into a dense tapestry of interlocking patterns, with rosettes, pomegranates, and vines all spiraling from its center in a symphony of perfect symmetry. While no two khachkars are identical, every single one obeys a strict, unspoken grammar of balance and proportion. A master carver would first lay out a precise grid, then use his compass to generate the intricate star patterns and endless knots that fill every available space. The result is a visual rhythm so complex and harmonious it feels almost alive. These stones were far more than art. They were active instruments of faith, serving as focal points for personal prayer, eternal memorials for the dead, and even as markers defining sacred or familial land. To stand before a khachkar was to stand before a portal where the order of the heavens was made visible in stone. The existence of these Armenian wonders, so distant from the Gothic cathedrals of France or the runestones of Scandinavia, delivers a profound message. The language of sacred geometry was not a European secret. It was a global human impulse, a deep-seated need to inscribe our understanding of the cosmos and the divine onto the most permanent materials we could find. Armenia simply gave this universal desire one of its most beautiful and enduring voices. That fragmented world we live in, where science, art, and faith often feel like separate, warring kingdoms, is a relatively new invention. The silent language of these stones offers us a way back, a chance to remember a more holistic way of seeing. Our modern expertise has brought incredible advances, but it has also built walls between disciplines. A structural engineer calculates load, an artist provides a facade, and a philosopher ponders meaning. Rarely do they speak the same language. The master mason had to be all three at once. His work challenges our narrow specializations, showing us the profound power of integrated knowledge, where a single beautiful form could be a spiritual symbol, a structural solution, and an artistic masterpiece simultaneously. For architects and designers today, these carvings are a masterclass in sustainable principles long before the word was coined. Beauty was not something applied like a coat of paint. It emerged naturally from the intrinsic harmony of the structure itself, from the elegant efficiency of a vault that stands because its geometry is perfect. There were no wasteful additions, only essential, meaningful form. This is a lesson we are desperately relearning in an age of disposable design. On a deeply personal level, this geometric code can serve as an anchor in our chaotic times. The rhythmic patterns of a knotwork carving or the perfect symmetry of a rose window have a quieting effect on the human mind. Gazing at them can become a form of meditation, a way to focus on the underlying order that exists beneath the surface noise of daily life. They are a visual mantra for calm, and on the broadest scale, understanding this shared heritage fundamentally reshapes our view of history. It dismantles the myth of the Dark Ages, revealing a period of sophisticated intellectual achievement, a vibrant conversation conducted across continents in the universal language of form. These stones are a permanent rebuke to the idea that our ancestors were simple or unenlightened. They were profound seekers, and they left their deepest structural truths carved in plain sight, not for secrecy, but for anyone with eyes to see. Their legacy invites us to look at our own world and ask what unifying principles, what beautiful and enduring truths we are building into the foundations of our own civilization. These silent stones are a forgotten book, its pages written in the universal language of geometry. Our journey across cathedrals and crosses reveals a world where a single carving could be a spiritual sermon, an engineering diagram, and a piece of cosmic music all at once. This was a language that transcended borders, connecting the Celtic carver, the Gothic mason, and the Armenian sculptor in a shared conversation about the fundamental order of creation. The slow fading of this geometric tongue represents more than just a change in artistic fashion. It marks the quiet loss of a profound wisdom, a way of seeing that seamlessly wove together faith, science, and art into a single, beautiful tapestry. We began by asking why a mason would hide complex mathematics in a stone leaf or a demon's face. The answer is now clear. He was not hiding it, he was proclaiming it. He was building a world where every curve and angle was a testament to a universe built on intelligible, beautiful law. The real secret was never a hidden treasure, but a hidden worldview. Today, as laser scans and digital models help us read these stones with fresh eyes, we have a rare opportunity. We can begin to recover that integrated vision, to learn from these master geometers how to build a world where meaning is not an afterthought, but is embedded into the very structure of our lives. Let their work inspire you to look closer at the world around you. Notice the spiral of a pine cone, the repeating pattern in a honeycomb, the elegant proportions of a well-designed object. These are echoes of that same universal language, reminders that we are still surrounded by a hidden geometry of beauty and connection. If this journey into the mind of the medieval Mason has illuminated the past for you, consider subscribing to continue exploring history's greatest mysteries with us. We would love to hear your thoughts. What hidden patterns have you noticed in your own world? Share your discoveries in the comments below.